we have present Councillors Buchanan and Dewar. We have apologies from Councillor Donnelly, and I can see that Councillor Mars has joined remotely. Councillor Fulton. I'm not seeing you present, Councillor Fulton. Also present today is Councillor Gowland. Not seeing Councillor Handybode present. Councillor Kerr. Not seeing you present either. Also present today are Councillors Lockhart and McDougall. We have a number of officers in attendance, and with that I'll pass back to yourself, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We'll move straight to the business of the day, and we start with item 1, which is declaration of interests. Are there any declaration of interests in the room or online? Not seeing any, so we'll move straight on to minutes of the previous meeting. So I will move the minutes as a correct record. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Lockhart. Councillor Lockhart, second, thank you. So moving on to our item for decision, which is our internal audit activity report, and Yvonne Douglas, our internal audit manager, will speak to this report. Thanks, Yvonne.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the activity report covering the period 1st of September through to the 14th of November 2025. Just in terms of the kind of overall stats attached to the plan that was brought to the Audit Committee in February of this year, 86% in progress and 29% are at draft report stage. You'll see that we're aiming to have 68% to draft report stage by the time we come to the March 2026 committee. 50 internal audit actions fell during the period, with 90% of those reported as being implemented. In terms of wider performance, we've got performance indicators. They're all set out at Appendix 1. You'll see there are 23 of those that are reportable at this point in the year, and we're noting in the report that all but 4 are on target. The ones that are not on target are listed in a table at 3.6, and we've also noted beside that what our intended corrective action is to bring those indicators back on target for the end of the financial year. In terms of the work that we completed to final report stage in the period, there are 4 separate assignments and they're set out in the report. The scope of those are listed in the table at 4.2, and we've got a summary of the output in terms of each of those assignments at Appendix 2. One of the assignments generated a draft of data and audit strategy, and they're attached to this report. The intention is to bring these back to the Audit Committee as a final version, so they're being presented to you today in draft version, and the intention is to come back when we present the internal audit plan at the March Committee with final versions of both of these documents. The audit strategy is Appendix 3, and that sets out what we want to achieve as a team, how we plan to meet the expectations of various stakeholders, but it also sets out the challenges that we face and the actions that we'll take to deliver the strategy. The data strategies at Appendix 4, and it highlights some fundamental changes in terms of how we'll audit and the part that data plays in all of this. The report also covers a review of the audit plan. That's something that we do throughout the year. It's not unusual. We don't usually come with suggested changes, but this time we have, and they're set out at the table at 4.7, and it's suggesting that work on 3 separate areas is deferred. The report notes the rationale for the proposed changes, and I'm satisfied that in deferring these pieces of work, it frees up resources for other higher priority areas. Finally, part of the report gives you an update in relation to the internal audit standard, and there's also a checklist at Appendix 5 that gives you a bit more detail around the requirements of the standards and our status against each of the principles. We've completed the majority of the work to comply with the standards, and hoping to be in a fully compliant position by the end of March. So the things that you'll have seen coming to the committee this year that have all been led by the standards is the new mandate and charter that came with the audit plan at the start of the year. We refreshed our performance indicators, which is what you can see attached to this report, and we've also now produced a formal audit strategy, albeit it's in draft format at this point in time. Finally, the report which references another aspect to that, the standards, and that's a meeting with members of the Audit Committee with myself as the Internal Audit Manager and without senior management present, and that's another requirement of the standards. So the report covers that in a little bit of detail, and we'll obviously go through that further as we meet after this meeting of the Audit Committee. So the recommendations, as usual, at the start of the report, and they're at 2.1. I'm asking that you note the progress and the performance in the period to 31st of October, which is set out in Appendix 1, that you note the output from the internal audit assignments that we completed in the period, that you approve the proposed amendments to the plan, that you note the outline audit strategy and draft data strategy, and also our assessed level of compliance with the global internal audit standards, which is set out within the report and in Appendix 5. That concludes the report. I'm happy to take any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Yvonne, do we have any questions on the report? No questions. I just wanted to give some focus and recognition to the new data strategy you're talking about. I think that'll be an important piece of work going forward, given the data landscape we've got and the help it can give to your work in audit and elsewhere in the organisation. Any other questions come through? No. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Yvonne. Can I just ask the committee to approve the report? Can I have a seconder? Councillor Lockhart. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to item 4, Accounts Commission 2025 Scrutiny, Governance and Transparency of Decision Making of Exit Packages of Senior Officers. That's quite a heading. So I'll ask Elaine Maxwell, HR Business Manager, to speak to this report, please. Elaine.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. So, as set out, the purpose of this report is to provide the committee on the letter that was recently issued by the Accounts Commission to all councils, and which was in respect of scrutiny around governance and transparency on its decision-making of exit packages for senior officers, and to provide you with a summary of the council's position, which is outlined within the paper. I suppose to start with, really just to reassure that South Lanarkshire Council is in a strong, robust position in this regard, so which is good to note at the start. Moving on to the report, obviously you're familiar with the background here in relation to the background of the reports that are published through the Accounts Commission, but more recently at section 3.2 around the letter that was received, and that was about, as I said, the transparency of arrangements in terms of its decision making, and that followed the publication of the report relating to Glasgow City Council, and obviously the link to that report is contained within the paper. More information then at section 4 around that letter. Obviously you'll see that came into the council on the 8th of September, and the purpose of the letter was to advise that obviously in terms of the considerations, in terms of the controllers, and about, as I said, that transparency and scrutiny. The Commission stated that it was vital that all councils take action to recognise important learnings from the report that it had issued, and also recognise that obviously the councils are continuing to face financial challenges that they are. However, that being said, that still required transparency and good governance around the decision making, which was essential. You see at section 4.4, it notes that the Commission was clear that the decisions of elected members and officers should uphold the 9 key principles of public life in Scotland, and obviously that's detailed there. Section 5 then goes on to outline the lessons that have been detailed as being learnt from the Glasgow City Council, and they are set out, as I say, in the 5 key points that are detailed there. I'm not going to repeat them, but importantly at 4.6 we note our council's position on the adapted recommendations are detailed further at section 5, and then moving on to section 5 you'll see in terms of the summary what our South Lanarkshire Council's provisions which have been in place, and that date back to 2012. 5.2 then goes on to note that the Council, as I stated at the start, is compliant with the position and the recommendations as noted by the Commission, and these are actually covered in the 5 points that are detailed within the report for everyone to refer to. So with that, in summary, the reports regarding any structure changes that result in any early retirement or voluntary severances of chief officers or statutory officers would be presented to Executive Committee for approval. Section 6 then goes on to just to highlight the next steps for the Council, and that's really just to continue to demonstrate the Council meets the recommendations that are outlined in paragraphs 4.5 and that the proposed next steps are followed. So that will be that the Council will continue to review any requirements to change existing policies, and any change would be reported to committee for approval. We are going to be issuing a personnel circular to all employees reminding them of the principles of public life, that the principles of public life are included in elected member and employee induction programmes, and that will be circulated on an annual basis with the Employee Code of Conduct, and that's due to be updated in January 26. And again, as per the scheme of delegation, all requests for early retirement and voluntary severance for chief officers and statutory officers will be presented to Executive Committee for approval and decision making, and any request for early release, early severance must demonstrate clear evidence as effective governance, independent scrutiny, and provide evidence of value for money, as well as robust and transparent record keeping. So I would take you back to section 2 within the report and reassure you that the Council does continue to follow, the strong, transparent processes that we have in place. And I would ask you to approve the following recommendations: that the contents of the report be noted, and the next steps, as I've outlined it, detailed in section 6, also be noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions on that report? No questions online? Okay, looks like we're fully compliant. Thanks very much, Elaine. If there's no questions, we'll ask for the report to be noted. I'll propose that, and Councillor Lockhart will second. Okay, thank you very much, Elaine. Moving on to item 5, our fraud statistics 6-monthly update 25-26. And we're back to Yvonne again, our internal audit manager, to speak to that paper, please.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, this is a routine report that we bring to the Audit Committee, and it covers the fraud statistics this time for the first 6 months of 25-26, and it also gives you a brief update on progress with other anti-fraud activity. The main information around fraud sits within the table. So the first of those, table 1 at 4.3, is our fraud caseload. You'll note there that the numbers are significantly lower when you look at the same 6-month period for 25 as compared to 2024. And that's because we've removed all cases where there's no housing benefit element. So where the case would be investigated and then pursued by the DWP, we've removed all of those cases so that we're only reporting on the cases for which South Lanarkshire Council has a responsibility to recover any overpayment either through fraud or error. The report's also noting that out with these stats, we've got 19 cases that have been investigated by DWP with an estimated value of £7,000. Cases closed are set out at table 2, and you'll note that of all the cases closed, only 3 were founded. And at table 3, we're noting that all 3 of those related to external parties. This only represents part of the fraud work, the anti-fraud work that's undertaken by the Council. So the remainder of the report sets out some of the other anti-fraud work that's been undertaken in the period. So it gives you an update on the fraud awareness programme, which forms part of our response to new legislation failure to prevent fraud. And you'll perhaps remember we brought a summary of that to a previous audit committee. It notes that we're continuing to share fraud alerts and reviewing lessons learned from reports that are published by Audit Scotland. We're also having a look at survey responses that have been reported by the National Anti-Fraud Network. There's some headline figures in the report, but the intention is within the annual report to capture some of the detail and importantly some of the actions that we think we need to take to respond. Finally, there's a brief summary in terms of progress with reviewing cases identified by the National Fraud Initiative, but the Audit Committee will be aware that separate reports come to them on this, so it's just a bit of comfort around the fact that all investigations are progressing and we're on target to conclude those by the end of March. A report on that will follow in Q1 of 26-27 with details of the outcomes from those investigations. So in terms of the report, we're noting that all elements of anti-fraud work are being progressed and will be reported in full within the annual report that comes to the committee in June, and then separately within the annual fraud report that comes later in the year. So in terms of recommendations, asking the committee note the contents at this stage, and again happy to take questions from members on the content of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for Yvonne on this report? No questions. Okay, I don't have any questions either, Yvonne. Thanks for the update. I'll ask the committee to note the report. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Lockhart, thank you. Moving on to item 6, Performance and Review Scrutiny Forum Annual Update. Tom Little, Head of Corporate Communications, will speak to this report, please. Thank you.
Oh, there we go. Sound better? Yep. So annual report, as you say, contains a list of all the papers that have gone to the Performance and Review Scrutiny Forum in this calendar year. And you'll see there have been 4 meetings of the forum this year. And the agendas are laid out at 4.1 in this report, which is page 51 of your papers. And you'll see they cover best value, improvement and performance management, and also oversight of the Council's transformational review programme. This report is just here for noting. Thanks.
Okay, short and sweet. Any questions for Tom? No questions. Okay, I don't have any questions either. Thanks for the update. So I'll ask the committee to note the report, and I'll propose that. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Lockhart. Okay, so that just leaves us to finish with our forward programme for future meetings. And I'll ask Elizabeth Ann to speak to that, please.
Thanks, Chair. This, again, is a standard report that comes to each meeting of the committee. The background is set out at paragraph 3.1 of your report. The purpose of the report is to advise members of the forward programme for this committee, and in the case of the report set in front of you, it's detailed up until the 3rd of November 2026. Members are also invited to suggest topics for inclusion in the committee's forward programme. So just take the committee back to the recommendation, and it's to note the content of the report. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Elizabeth Ann. So again, any questions on that? No questions? Okay, I'll ask the committee to note the report. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Lockhart. Thank you. There's no urgent business, so that just remains for me to close the report, wish everyone a happy Christmas when it comes, and we've got another meeting after this one, for which we'll need to move to Teams with our internal audit manager. Okay, thank you, and I'll close the meeting.